Hi, everybody. James and I are talking about a really fundamental question today. No fluff, no high-level stuff, no, just straightforward. What should AI be doing for recruiters? James, what do you reckon?
Well, I mean, yes, we've got into quite some detail, I think, Adam, but there's a lot of noise around in the market at the moment. So let's get back to that single point, simple as that, because that's what we should be looking at. And I think what we first need to say is that what AI should be doing is help sourcing, help screening, help summarizing, help scheduling. But the better question is, if recruiters stop doing that, what should they start doing as a result? Because are we not automating? If we think about efficiency ratios of recruiters,
Yeah.
we always thought recruiters were people who got through volume really quickly and there was speed, etc., etc. But if that is now taken care of, and if we think about a hiring process, 95% of the work that a recruiter does is pushing towards a negative outcome,
Yes.
because there's only that top 5% of work which is based around the individual who
Yeah.
actually successfully gets the role. So if we're condensing or even removing a lot of that 95%, then what are we exposing about the recruiter? So if we think AI removes friction, it stops manual sourcing, it can stop screening up volume, it can coordinate interviews, it can do note taking, it can do admin. All of this works matters. We know it does. But in the actual focus of hiring an individual, it's admin work. It doesn't create the differentiation of we've secured the right person in the role and he's going to make impact.
Yeah.
So if AI is compressing that layer, is the recruiter now completely exposed?
Let's talk it through in terms of tasks. So let's go from jobs on to jobs
Yeah.
filled, right? So jobs on. What are the tasks the recruiter needs to do? I'll give you a few that I think. So they get a notification from the hiring manager that through the HR system that there's a rec.
Mm-hmm.
They then probably need to determine, okay, what do I know about this job? So they need to do some, like, maybe they may need to do some job discovery if they don't know an awful lot about the job. They might need to understand, like, what types of people do this job, what are the synonymous job titles, who are the main employers in that location, where are the best locations for these people, and that type of thing. So what else is at that sort of pre-kickoff meeting stage? What do they need to do?
Well, I mean, if we go back to discovery and we think about the last conversation we had, we talked about
Yeah.
clarity. Clarity was
Yes.
important. So
Yes.
in my mind, the bits that get forgotten by
Yeah.
the recruiter and
Yeah.
are incredibly important is number one, discovery, ensuring clarity. Number two, making sure that all stakeholders across, let's call it, that's not call it, across that environment for the role are aligned.
Yeah.
Number three, they're providing insight. They're talking to that hiring manager around what's the availability.
Yeah.
But I think fundamentally, we go back to what is the challenge we're trying to solve,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
absolute kind of epicenter of why we're hiring somebody.
Yeah.
So to hire someone effectively, we need to understand that. So if we then understand that, if we then go from the process that a recruiter will go to, whether it's um, looking at outbound, so specific targeting of individual, whether it's putting advertising out there and ensuring and looking at inbound capability, that part of the process now can be done at high speed with automation, with AI. So surely the most important part that we're now looking at is that first bit: clarity, insight,
Yeah.
alignment.
Yeah.
Because we all know when a recruitment process falls over, it's
Yeah.
usually to do with one of those first 3 or 4 aspects. It's not to do with, oh, have I looked at the right CVs?
Yeah.
We get so many occasions with hiring managers that we're not going through 3 months, 4 months, we're not hiring the right person. Well, surely then the reality is that first point of clarity of what we want that individual to do, because there's a misalignment.
Yeah, so a lot of that is a lot of that needs desktop research. A lot of that needs like really like going into using your intelligence tools and using Google to go and try and understand all of this so that you can guide the hiring manager around how the search should work. Um, what's AI's purpose in that? It's making it faster. It's aggregating it
Yeah,
all, and
exactly.
it's bringing it all together in a way that a human is going to take a much longer time to actually do. Okay.
But then surely the movement from, because we've always talked about with recruiters about execution.
Yeah.
So the shift in the paradigm now surely goes from execution to enablement.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you're going, Mr. Recruiter, I'm releasing you for all this heavy admin work. You don't need to do this. It's automated.
Yeah.
So now what are you going to do? But in some respects, I think that represents a huge opportunity, but also a huge, not risk, but huge exposure, because what it actually does is highlight skills, lack of skills capability in the recruiter.
So if they're going to if AI can spoon feed people with the knowledge they need, they can distill it to the important points, then what it means is that recruiter's job is analyzing that and positioning it to the hiring manager in such a way that they can influence the search. And that is high skilled work.
So yeah, I mean, it's got to focus on defining on what good looks like. It's got to focus on aligning stakeholders, designing the assessment, because
Yeah.
we need to become, we need to move away from being process individuals to
Yeah.
actually being part of that system.
Yeah.
And so advising the hiring managers on what the best assessment process might be.
Yeah.
We need to then interpret communication or signals, if you want to call them that the hiring manager has, but also what the candidate pool is saying. And in many respects, it's a bit of a strange thing to say, but I think it goes back and it highlights the skill set that if you go back to, I don't know, when the market was going a bit crazy in the late 90s and we had recruitment consultants who are external, all of the communication was done over telephone. You built relationships, you influenced the candidate, you influenced your client. And I think it kind of energizes those skill sets, because when you, and as we talked kind of in the previous discussion, there is still huge competition for the top level of talent.
Of course.
So if you can influence that top level of talent to come to your role, then that is a positive thing. I mean, I go back to my previous roles that I've done in large corporates, and coming into the business, I was seeing the TA team that they didn't have conversations with their candidates. It was just done over email. It was a process. It was a manufacturing process. And I really couldn't understand it. It was going, okay, how are we advising our candidates? How are we advising our hiring managers? We're just being a medium in between two communication flows. And it just, I mean, to me, it didn't, there was no chance we could operate in that advisory capacity if all we did was operate as a middleman passing communication information each way.
Yes.
And I think the biggest risk we've got with AI is if you don't get to that advisory piece, that judgment piece, that clarity piece, all you're actually doing is scaling the same thing. You're getting to bad decisions more quickly. It's as simple as that.